the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Hello. It is such an honor, and I'm so humbled to have the chance on behalf of people here to ask you a few questions before we will open it up to the audience. David Gergen mentioned your laser-like focus, which was evident in your remarks, is evident in everything you've done. But when we were backstage, I asked you about the day that you won the Nobel Prize. And I don't think there's ever been a story that more testifies to your focus on learning than how that day went. So I wonder if you could share for the young people here what happened.
Yeah, so there was like a lot of news regarding the Nobel Peace Prize in 2013, and I did not win that year, and I didn't expect it to win. Like I was telling everybody, like I'm only 16, and the next year came 2014, and my dad was saying, you might win, and like there were some people in the fund team and in our colleagues, and they say if you might win, we need to prepare a media statement and everything. I said no, I'm going to school. So I went to school, and they announce it at 10 a.m. UK time, but they call you half an hour before to tell you that you have won the Nobel Peace Prize. It was 9:30, none of us received a call. I was in my classroom and I looked at the clock and I said, yeah, like no news. And then around like 10:15 or something, one of my senior tutors came into the classroom, and she was like the deputy head teacher, and she comes when you are in trouble, when you have done something wrong. And she called me outside the classroom and she said, you have won the Nobel Peace Prize. And I said like nothing bad, I'm okay, I'm safe. And then I came to know that I had won the prize, and it was the first time that I gave a speech in my school. In my school, I was always like a bit shy, and I did not want to show myself as this public speaker, and just to stay as a student. It was the first time that I spoke in my school, and it was just a coincidence that when it was announced, I was in my chemistry class, and we all know Nobel was, a chemist, and I still had like my school hours left, and I still had many classes. So I said, I'm not going to leave school. I'm going to finish my school day. And I went back to a physics class, and we were learning about, atomic bombs and like nuclear weapons. I said, oh, look at the coincidence. and then I went home, and my parents were very, very happy. And my dad is here. There's my brother as well, a little one. So they were very happy, and then we had a press conference, and I was really grateful. But it was just, when you're not expecting it and you just cannot digest the news. So we were in a bit of that situation.
Well, it was fascinating to get your dad's account too, because while you weren't really focused on it, he was hitting refresh on the laptop. Like any parent would. Could you say a little bit about the role of not just your dad, but fathers generally on the cause of your life?
I'm just so grateful that I have an amazing father who is not just my father, but he's also my friend. And we are very free in conversation with each other. We are just like good buddies. We can say anything to each other. And he has believed in me right from the beginning. Before I was born, he believed in me. And he had decided that he would name me after the Malala Yousafzai, who is this Afghan heroine. She raised her voice in the Second Anglo-Afghan War in the 1800s. And when the Afghan soldiers were leaving the battle because they had given up, her voice was so powerful that it attracted all the soldiers back to the battlefield, and they won that war. So it just reminds us of how powerful a voice can be, and also the fact that she's actually the only female figure who is known by her own name in our Pashtun history. In Pashtun history, women are often referred to as someone's daughter, someone's sister. People would call me as Ziauddin's daughter or Atal's sister, but not by my own name. And that's how it typically goes. Even if you go and see a doctor, they would say, so, who are you daughter of, or who are you sister of? They would not write their own name. And my father believed that his daughter should be known by her own name. So he named me after the Malala Yousafzai one. So that's why I'm called Malala. And also the fact that when my father's cousin made our family tree, and it was full of men's name, even though we had women in the whole family 300 years back, but no female was mentioned, as if they did not exist. They were not part of that family generation. And at that time, I was born, and my dad wrote my name, first female name on our family tree. And so he was a feminist before he even knew the word feminism. Yeah.
So you had the chance together to go back to your home village in March of this year.
Yes.
After 5.5 years of being a displaced person, being a refugee, being one of the 70 million people, I guess, now in the world whose plights you are doing so much to highlight and to champion. I wonder if you could describe what it was like to go home.
Yeah, so we had not seen our home for more than 5.5 years, and we felt a bit of incompletion in our life. And we really wanted to go back and see our home. And we tried for it many times, but it did not work. And then finally, I insisted that we have to go. We cannot wait for the right time, because if you look at the politics, especially in Pakistan, you would never find the right time. That never comes. So you have to just believe in yourself and just go for it. So we decided in March that we will go back. And there I was. I opened my eyes and I put my feet on the ground of Pakistan. I was breathing the air of Pakistan. It was a very nice, beautiful weather. The air was warm and welcoming, and my friends and family were there. We met more than 600 of our friends and family, and I received so many hugs and kisses and prayers, and we took a lot of pictures and selfies. And we also went to our home, Swat Valley. And I went to the same street where I used to play with my friends, saw the rooftop where I used to, where my brothers used to fly their kites and, sometimes quarrel and fight. And I also saw my own room where I could see my school trophies, and I could still see my books there, my own drawing that I had done, my bed, and everything was there. And it was a house on rent, and this family who are living there, they had preserved that room. They were so grateful, and we saw our neighbors and everyone, and it was completely unrealistic, because you are just pinching yourself and reminding yourself that it is true. You are not in a dream, because my dad had many dreams. He used to be in his dreams he used to be in Pakistan every night. So for us, it was just completely a dream that we were in Pakistan. But I'm just so grateful that it came true, and we felt completion in a way.
And having traveled now around the world, not only championing girls' education, but championing, again, the welfare of refugees and displaced people, what do you think it is that we don't get about them? I know you take this up. She has a book coming out in January, really dedicated to the people she's met on her travels. But what are we missing about refugees?
I think when we hear about refugees in the news, we hear about them in numbers. We do not really hear the human stories, why they leave their homes, why they are forced to leave their countries. And all we hear is that these criminals are coming and they are taking our economy and our jobs and everything. And I think this is so sad, and it is so unfair and so unjust, and it is so cruel, and I don't know how people still do that, and how can someone not understand what they're going through. And my family and we ourselves were internally displaced in Pakistan for 3 months when there was terrorism in Swat Valley, and we had no option, because the military said that in order to bring peace into Swat Valley, you have to leave the houses, because we cannot find the terrorists in the valley when the civilians are here. So we had to leave our valley for more than 3 months, and you are in a situation when you do not know whether you would be able to go back to your house or not. You do not know whether you would be able to get a job anywhere else or not. So it's a situation that is completely unimaginable. And I have met many refugee children. Now I have been to Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. I have been to Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya. I have met many refugees in Lebanon, in Rwanda, and I have also met refugees who have settled in the UK and in the US. and meeting the host communities who have welcomed them, especially in Pennsylvania. And I sometimes you see so much of this disappointment and despair and hopelessness in the media and among people who have so much. And then you go to a refugee camp and you feel like they should be the most depressed people in the world, because they have nothing. They do not have shelter, they have no electricity, they have no quality education. But you go there and you talk to them, they're the most hopeful people. All the girls I have met in the refugee camps, they're so positive about their future. They believe that one day they will be able to go back to their country. All of them have dreams. They want to become journalists, teachers, doctors. And one girl who I asked in Lebanon what she wants to be, and she said she wants to be an architect. And when I asked why, she said that when she was leaving her country, she saw it being destroyed, and she wants to become an architect so she could go back and rebuild her country. So this is how these wars and conflicts have affected these young girls and children's lives, but they are still determined to go back to their countries and change their country and rebuild it. But I think the crucial thing is that they need quality education. We cannot ignore this generation. Some of them have been in these refugee camps for more than 6 years. Some of them have been there for 20 years, for 25 years, especially in Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya. The children who are born there are not recognized as Kenyan because they call it as an open prison. They're not allowed to go and integrate into the rest of the country, and they're not given that citizenship. But most of them do not consider themselves as Somali because they are not born on that land. So there is this difficulty that they go through because they are born on this piece of land where nobody recognizes them, where nobody accepts them. And you all would know the situation of Rohingya refugees as well. And so I think it's important for us to learn more about them, and I'm hopeful that through the book, which is called We Are Displaced, which is going to be released in the second week of January, I hope that you will read it and learn more about the stories of these amazing young girls who have overcome so many barriers, who put their lives at risk, and learn how they themselves have walked for miles and miles and miles and hours and hours and hours and crossed the borders, and what are the challenges that they went through. But also learn about the host communities, of how they welcome them, also learn about what a life is like in the refugee camp, and I've also shared my own story as IDP.
So I'm going to ask 2 more questions. So after my next question, maybe people could start to gather so we can open this up to the students here. As was mentioned, we have 60 members of Congress here today in the audience. It's a bipartisan delegation, which unfortunately we don't have a lot of bipartisan gatherings, as many as we used to. Refugee policy is something that used to have bipartisan support. We've had really strong numbers of bringing people into this country across, the various administrations, really from the late 1970s to the present. I wonder if there's anything that you'd like to say again to people from both parties about refugees and this moment now.
I think firstly, don't greet refugees with tear gas. That's not what refugees deserve. I shared my own story, where I come from, what was happening in our valley. I shared the stories of many of these girls who have become refugees because of wars and conflicts. And just a reminder that we were also living in a peaceful country. Swat was not a war-torn area before Talibanization started. We had a very beautiful area. It was known for tourism. People from across the world used to go there and visit our beautiful mountains and rivers. And the same was for Syria. The same was for other countries where we now see many refugees are coming from. These were peaceful countries, just like the US is, just like the United Kingdom is, just like France or Germany or any other country is. So we should not assume that it is these people's fault that they are refugees. It's never their fault. And we should try to understand how would we want other people to welcome us when it happens to us. And I hope it never happens to any one of us, and I hope everything gets better. But I think we need to look at it from the human eye and be more welcoming and consider themselves as our brothers and sisters. And I think let's be human, and let's understand that we are all living on this, one planet Earth, which is already in danger and which is already at a great risk because of the climate change. And we all need to think about, we all are in danger in that sense. So we need to be more welcoming. We need to be more positive, and we need to be more human regarding welcoming and treating each other. So let's treat each other as brothers and sisters living in this globe of Earth. Yeah.
When I was ambassador to the UN, when I was ambassador to the UN, there was an exhibit in the basement or in the foyer of the General Assembly building, and it was the Golden Rule, which, as you put it, in all the languages of the world. And it was amazing. They did a little history on the Golden Rule, doing unto others as you'd have done unto yourself. And each culture that they profiled had sort of organically landed in this place. And so it's what we teach our children. And the question is, can our policies at a state level embody those values that we want our children to grow up with? My last question for you, in advance of the students, is just you're a student now, and you were an accidental activist in some ways, just claiming your rights for yourself, the rights that every child deserves, and then an accidental global figure, just because you stood for those rights, and some people didn't like it. Now you're in a classroom, and you've had a little more than a year to study, as you say, politics and philosophy and economics. I wonder, have you learned anything in the classroom, as professors, please tell us you have, that informs your activism, that makes you think differently about how you project your message?
Mm-hmm. I think definitely, but Oxford is very focused, is very subject-focused university, because
Harvard, not so much. Harvard, much more broad-minded.
Because I think in the US, like, you have minors and then you have majors, and it's just so flexible. And then Oxford is not that flexible, because in the UK you have to apply for the degree rather than the university. So you choose your degree first, and then whichever university offers the degree, then you apply to that university. So for me, like, I can only choose modules within philosophy, politics, and economics. And so I'm doing 8 modules. I'm doing macroeconomics, quantitative economics, political sociology, international relations, politics in South Asia, international security and conflict, ethics, and Plato's Republic. It is a mix of so many topics.
Light mode, yeah, slacker.
But I think it's very interesting because you get used to this new style of learning, which, like, for international students, I think they would understand it more, because in some countries the way that we are taught is kind of rote memorization. It's like whatever is written in the book, it's treated like a Bible. You have whatever it says is true, and I think for me it's so unique and so incredible that all the Western universities encourage you to criticize what you read, to look at it from a very analytical and critical eye, and do not just blindly trust whatever you read. Now in the age of fake news, it's so important that we understand whatever we are reading, that we know where it comes from, who has written it, whether it's a credible resource or not. So all these things are crucial. So for me, that was one interesting thing, and also just the content. It's intense studying at Oxford. It is very in depth, and time management is a big issue, and I try to do that. And but I think for my own work, just looking at how we need more research and more work in terms of how investing in women can help us grow economies. And one study that we did recently with the World Bank, so Malala Fund together with the World Bank, which was also supported by Apple, that tells us that if we give complete education to girls, it can add up to $30 trillion to the global economy. So I think more studies on gender equality, on the ethnic representation, I think these issues will help us to learn more, because you do see that most of the the reading lists and things you get are very dominated by male white writers. So I think that, and there is a change. They are trying to change it. So that is something that needs to be done. So it's more diverse, it's more global, it's more gender equal as well. So, you're not really in one point of view. You get to hear other points of views as well.
So one thing I hope your visit can accomplish is for the students here, it's exam time now, and a lot of them are feeling sorry for themselves at this moment. And your course load, I think, offers some perspective. But also the fact that as you were maintaining this course load, you were traveling around the world and offering such inspiration to young girls, to boys, and to displaced people. So I think, buckle down, everybody. It's if she can do all this, we've got it easy here. All right, let us open it up, please, to questions. And do we have people who've lined up? Great. Why don't we start with you? And I should say, again, as always, very succinct. A lot of people are going to want to engage with Malala. And then please end your remarks, your succinct remarks, with the question mark.
Hi, my name's Kiana. I'm a first year at the college. So there's certainly no shortage of pushback on the kind of work you're doing. I know, as we know, some schools in Pakistan have banned your book. There have been anti-Malala days. My question is, in your opinion, what should we do about the people who seem unwilling to change their minds, who seem entrenched in these age-old patriarchal views? Do we ignore them? Do we give up on them and focus on the future generations? Or do we try to change their minds? And if so, how?
Thank you so much for your question. I think there is a bit of negativity in Pakistan, but that's very small. And social media and news makes it too big, while it is not that big. And the majority of the people in Pakistan, they support me, they stand with me, and they treat me as their daughter. They treat me as a daughter of Pakistan. There is a mindset that is not against me personally, but that is against women in leadership. There were many people who could not accept Benazir Bhutto as the Prime Minister of Pakistan because she was female, because she was a woman. There are many people who do not want to see women being educated. They do not want to see women speaking out and women giving advice on how things should be, women in power telling them, this is how the law should work, this is how the legislation should work. So there is that mindset. And so I do not take it like as an attack on me personally, but as an attack on female voice, as an attack on women in general. And I think this in itself is a reminder that your work is making an impact, because the fact that some people are reacting shows that they are a bit scared of you and of the potential that you have and the power that you have in your voice. But I think in terms of like reacting to it, it depends. If it's like a social media comment, you never look at that and you ignore it. Like I have my Twitter on my phone, but I just never go to the comment section because I have so much other things to do and I have a lot of other work to do. But I think regarding if it's coming from someone who is a great person and you should consider their views and see what they mean and look at it from their angle as well. But oftentimes it's extremist religious minded people, whether they are holding weapons in the name of the Taliban or whether they are just Taliban in their head but without any weapons. So I think that's the ideology that needs to be challenged, and for that education is the key. Educate the future generation, give them quality education, and in Pakistan and many other countries we need quality education for girls and boys, so we encourage them towards critical thinking, towards the knowledge of science and towards the knowledge of other than just religious knowledge, so that they are aware of the world and how the world works and are ready for the future jobs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here, yes.
Hi, thank you so much. Sasha Chanoff with Refuge Point. We're an organization that finds lasting solutions for refugees.
And a former Gleitsman Award winner.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm here with my colleague Amy Slaughter, who received the award with me on Refuge Point's behalf, who's right over there. I was
are you studying here?
No, not now.
Okay. So were you studying before?
I studied at the Fletcher School.
Okay.
And come
I was just
speak here
wondering
regularly.
if you get this award and there is some obligation to study here after that. I was just making sure. Okay, no pressure.
There is if you
no pressure.
I was in Kakuma refugee camp in northern Kenya recently and stepped into a kindergarten, and I saw that there were about 50% boys and 50% girls. I stepped out and into a high school classroom. There were about 5% boys, 5% girls, 95% boys. And I said, where are all the girls? And the few girls who were there said, others have been forced into marriage. They're stuck at home doing the chores there. We don't have access to education. We're not valued as much as the boys. I know that recently you've met with a number of philanthropic leaders, refugee champions here in Boston, Barry Landry, Ed Shapiro. I wonder if you could share with us a little about the dreams and aspirations that you shared with them about reaching more girls with education opportunities.
Thank you. I have been to many refugee camps, and it is very true that girls are always in less number compared to boys. But in a refugee camp, education is a big issue, including for boys as well, because many colleges and universities would not recognize their degrees. Just the quality of education that they receive. For instance, like in Bangladesh, for Rohingya refugees, it's very like basic level learning. It is not even proper education that they are getting. So education is a big challenge for refugee children. And so I think that in itself is something that needs that, our politicians or governments need to work on. It's not just about funding, but the curriculum and how we recognize their degrees and how they can then go forward in their life for further studies and jobs as well. But for me, I think the work that we do is actually focusing and supporting the local activists who are supporting refugees. So in Lebanon, we are supporting this organization called Alternative Learning, and this organization, they are working on this digital device where they have the content on this device for refugee children, so they are able to catch up with the studies that they have missed and are able to then go into the normal schools. And this device has been now taken by the government, and it's been implemented in the whole country for the refugee children. So that is the work that we are supporting, and I believe that for this is I wish we could do it quicker and we could do it now, and I've been pushing for it on so many platforms, from the UN to other platforms as well, because we are doing our part as well. We are supporting local activists, we are investing in them to support girls' education, but a lot needs to be done. Especially we need the support and the role of the government, from the governments, from business sectors as well.
Yes.
Salam Malala. Salam Malala. My name's Aisha. I am originally from Karachi, Pakistan, and a first-year student at the Kennedy School. You started off your speech highlighting the importance of activism, and one of the most positive developments in Pakistan this year was specifically the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, which advocated for greater rights for the Pashtun minority community. I was hoping to hear about your specific thoughts of the movement, the political developments following it, and the future that you see for the Pashtun community in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm. So yes, yeah, I'm a Pashtun. Pashtun are people who speak Pashto language. They are mostly in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we have great history. Most of it is unknown because people don't know where we come from. Some people think we are the lost tribe of the Jews. Sometimes some people connect us to the Greeks. I don't know where we come from, but we have been in that region for a long, long time, which is currently Afghanistan and Pakistan. And that Pashtun community has gone through many difficulties and many challenges, from the creation of the Mujahideen to then the Taliban, and now we are also suffering from what this radicalization and this extremist ideology has created. So our population is deeply affected by that, but and we have different politics in Pakistan as well. But I hope that So in Pakistan, there was FATA region, which was federally administrated area, and that region, the population of that region had no equal rights as other citizens of Pakistan in terms of their voting rights, in terms of any kind of, like, if anybody had committed a crime, the whole family could have been prosecuted, or like there were crazy rules and things that we cannot imagine. They were not treated fairly and equally. And there is also the issue of missing persons, that people disappear from their homes and then they never come back, and in the name of so-called counterterrorism policy. But I hope that the government of Pakistan and the establishment of Pakistan realizes that in order for Pakistan to go forward, in order for this Naya Pakistan, this new Pakistan to achieve progress, it must treat all its citizens equally, give them equal rights, give them access to education and health, and treat them all equally as Pakistanis. If we do not treat them equally, if we do not appreciate and recognize their culture, their traditions, then they will stand up for their rights. So, and I think it's true for any country. You have to recognize every community that is living there, their culture, their language, their religious beliefs, their everything that they have that community recognizes. You have to appreciate it and recognize it, because that's what makes Pakistan. If we ignore Pashtuns, if we ignore Balochis, if we ignore other populations, then Pakistan just remains as land with no people. So, yeah.
Hi,
Next
Malala.
question.
My name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'm the Congresswoman-elect from New York's 14th Congressional District. I love the story that you told about your father. And I have a similar story in that I loved when you said that he believed in you before you were born. Mm-hmm. And I know that with my own parents, when they were deciding, they did not know if I was going to be a boy or a girl when my mother was pregnant. They didn't find out until the moment I was born. And my parents had cut a deal. They said, if it's a boy, my mother will be able to name the child. And if it's a girl, my father will be able to name the child. And so I was born a woman. And my brother got the leftovers name, and my father chose to name me Alexandria, which means defender of men, mm-hmm. defender of mankind, and so I so appreciated this story, and a very large amount of successful women, when they ask women whether they're female CEOs of Fortune 500s, heads of state, one of the most common predictors and one of the most common things that they talk about is that they all report a strong relationship with their father. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested in your thoughts on the role of men in advancing feminism, and not just in identifying as feminist or talking about feminist things, but what tangible actions and roles that men can play in their lives to advance the liberation and cause of women.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your question, and thank you for your amazing story. When we talk about feminism and women's rights, and men should know that we are talking about them. That's where the problem comes from. So men have to play their role, and I think it's a long way, because it has been institutionalized as well. Even in Oxford universities, like my college is one of the few colleges where you see portraits of women, because it was the first women's college in Oxford. Women were not allowed to study and get degrees in those colleges, and it started in 1878. So just that itself reminds me of how our institutions, from political institution to education ones, are just hugely dominated by men and their influence and this mindset of it was this based on this ideology about educating men and building up as their leaders. So a lot needs to change, but I think it begins from firstly changing your mind and changing your ideology. And my father always says that, I said he was a feminist before he even knew the word feminist. But he said that the first person he had to fight against and he came across was he himself, because he had those ideologies in his head. He was growing up in a family which was not treating his sisters equally. None of his 5 sisters could go to school. He saw that, you know, women could just get married early as well. They did not deserve education, and he could have gone with that. He could have said, that's fine, everybody does it, I'll do it as well. But he had to challenge himself because he knew that it was unfair. He knew that it had to change. So he challenged himself first and said, you know, I'm not going to treat my daughter this way. I'm going to treat her differently. I'm going to give her equal rights. I'm going to send her to school. I'm going to let her speak out. So I think it's important for men to fight against that misogynist views that they have in their head, and believe that empowering women is not just giving something to women, but it also contributes to our economy, to every one of us. Because, you know, when we, for instance, like when we empower girls with education, it is helping us to reduce poverty. It's helping us to tackle with climate change. It's helping us to reduce early child marriages. So all these things just connect so well. And if you look at, you know, when we because I still remember I met this one family in Manchester in the UK, and you would expect that these, you know, you are living in a different country now, your views may have changed now, but this was a Pakistani family, and this boy had 4 or 5 sisters, but he was like so strict. He was not letting his sisters to go out, or you know, and it was just this kind of misogynist view that I am going to be the caretaker of the family and the breadwinner. And just, I think like men and boys need to realize that when they put so much pressure on themselves, they would not be able to handle it. So it's in a way, empowering women is reducing their burden as well. But I think also women need to stand up for themselves, and not. I think we have to challenge the status quo. And the house that I grew up in had 2 boys, and I had 2 younger brothers, and I tried to teach them from a very early age that I was stronger, that I could fight with them. And me and my brothers had a lot of fights. We still fight, and it is so normal in our house. But they know that, you know, they cannot beat me, or they cannot. No, it's true. You have to teach them. You have to teach them that like men should not assume that they can just go and like harm women or force women towards anything. And like you have to teach them from a very early age that you know, they are other human beings. Do not think that they are weaker than you physically or in whatever way. And you know, like if you challenge women, this is a big problem you are getting into. So, yeah.
We are running a little short on time, so what I'm going to do is just take a few comments from, I guess we'll do 3 more comments, and then we'll hear from Malala. Go ahead.
My name's Ariana. I'm 10 years old, and I really admire you.
Thank you.
I was wondering, when you were going through all the tough times, what kept you going? What kept you like happy?
I think rather than take the 2 questions, we'll get Malala's response here and now.
I think for me it was just meeting the girls and hearing their powerful stories in the refugee camps who are never giving up. One girl I met in Iraq, in Kurdistan, was forced to get married when she was only 14, and she ran away from that, taking off her high heels, and she was still in her bridal wear that she ran away. And she believed in her education, and she believed that through her education she can find herself and she can find the independence that she was looking for. So these are the stories that inspire me every day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Malala.
Yes.
Hi, Malala. My name is Iza. I'm from Lahore, Pakistan, and I'm studying at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I just want to tell you that you are a great inspiration to many of us educators studying here from Pakistan. And a week after that incident happened with you, I signed up for teaching, and I've never looked back. And you mean a lot to us. My question to you is that what would be one tangible reform that you would want us educators to take back to Pakistan and start with, one stepping stone that we could begin with?
Thank you. Up in the balcony.
Hi, Malala. Thank you so much for being here. You're such an inspiration to me and so many young women. I am a first-year master's in public policy student, and I grew up in the United States as undocumented. I came to this country at 10 months old. As you can imagine, it has not been easy because of the immigration policies. I've been separated from my mother, my father, and my brother. And while I've worked really hard and I've had the privilege of education, I'm a medical student at Mount Sinai, New York. I'm a Harvard student, and yet I still fear for my livelihood. And I worry that once, even if I finish all of my education, I could be deported. And so my question to you is, what words of hope and guidance do you give for individuals who have been working and dreaming and fighting for a better future, but still fear for their livelihood?
Beautiful. Thank you. Last question here. Yes.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. I'm also Pakistani, and first of all, I know it's repetitive, but I really wanted to say that you give us a lot of hope, not just you, your dad as well. Thank you so much for that. And my question was specifically that for NGOs who go back and work in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or Balochistan or Sindh, what is what is one advice that you want to give, which is specific to the culture of KPK, that all these NGOs should have in mind when they're working on education?
And even though we said that was the last question, I can't resist. Who could possibly resist our last question?
Hello, my name is Jose. I'm from the Philippines, and I have a question for you.
Yes.
What inspired you to stand up to girls' education?
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much for your question. I think I can answer yours first because you're more important to me. Because when I was only 11 years old, these people came into our home town, Swat Valley, and they said that no girl is allowed to go to school, because they knew that when girls go to school, they learn, they get knowledge, then they get empowered, and then they can have their own future, they can become doctors, teachers, engineers, and they don't like that. They want women to stay in the house, just do the cleaning and do not speak, do not talk about their rights, do not talk about equality. So they want women to be quiet. And that is why they said women should not go to school, girls should not go to school. And I wanted my right to go to school. I wanted to become a doctor. So I said it is so important to speak out. And so what was happening in my hometown was what inspired me to start speaking out. It was the situation in which I was. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the other questions about what education reform?
I think in terms of like working in KPK and other areas where you feel like culture might be a barrier for your work in terms of education, I think wherever you want to work, culture should not be a big issue if you engage with the local communities, if you try to hear from them and get their advice. And so the Gul Makai Champions Network is actually supporting local activists. It's not that this organization is going there and telling them, this is how work should be done. Like, it's never like that. It's never like, I know how to fix your country. It should never be like this. It should be actually going there because there are so many hardworking activists out there in all these countries which we talk about and which we want to fix, whether it's in terms of education, health, or other areas, is actually going and talking to the local communities and actually working with the local activists and supporting them in their work, in the help that they need, whether it's financial support or whether it's some training or helping them in their communication skills or giving them access to technology. I think these are the things that can really help them, and that allows you to build up that good relations and communication with the local communities, whichever country you want to work in. Yeah.
Great, and there was the question for educators. Are there reforms for educators that you have in mind?
So many reforms are needed, from curriculum to making sure that it is more inclusive, it is it is encouraging female to believe in themselves, it is also more tolerant towards other religions and other faiths as well. And in Pakistan, like, a lot needs to be done. Also, the government makes promises regarding increase in budgets. The last government said that it would increase our GDP percentage towards education up to 4%, but it did not, and it stayed at, I think, around 2.6%. So they have not really increased the GDP. So they do make promises during the election times that they're just so amazing in terms of that. You feel like they'll fix it. But when it comes to actually implementing those, then nothing gets done. So I think it's important that they increase their budget spending and increase their GDP spending towards education, but also not just increasing the spending, but where it goes. So it's not just, it's the allocation of it, so it goes to the right areas. Because for instance, like in one part in Swat Valley, which is called Kalam, there is 1 girls' schools compared to like 19 or 20 boys' schools. So you see the huge gender disparity there, that there is, they are not considering gender in terms of when they're investing in girls in education. There are also some ghost schools where the schools are built but there are no teachers. Oftentimes the number of teachers is increased or the salaries of teachers is increased, but actually not the quality and not the teachers' training. So I think the list is too long, but I think bringing political parties together on encouraging them and pushing them that investment in education is important and they need to make it one of their key priorities would be crucial, because I don't even think that anybody talks about it. It is not one of the daily things that you get to hear. Oftentimes they're just blaming each other and yeah.
Well, given that we have, again, 60 members of Congress here, this is a really important message as they head to Washington, both in terms of domestic investments, but I will say the Republican-led House also managed to preserve international education spending despite the Trump administration's effort to cut that funding, but for them to be looking also, given their role on the budget, as to what more can be done, and again, how that money is allocated is a great message. Okay, the last question was from this extraordinary woman, and what to say to somebody who still fears for their livelihood despite doing everything right.
I think, like Alexandra, you do not need any advice or any message from anyone else, because you yourself are a message of hope to so many people, and you are giving us hope that, you know, there is still light out there and there is still a way out there. So thank you for who you are. Thank you for staying strong and brave, and I hope that people will hear your story and realize that how cruel it is to separate someone from their family, and do not recognize that they also should have equal opportunities as anybody else. They should also have equal right to dream anything in their life as anybody else. And just because we come from a different background or different countries or some border has separated us, that does not mean that we should be treated unfairly. So I hope that people, and there are Congress men and Congresswomen here in this room, and I hope they hear your voice as well and take it to that level where the decisions are made. But I also have met many, like Republican and Democrat congressmen and women, and I have always received a very positive message, especially the one that you mentioned regarding international aid towards education. And I'm so proud that it was, you know, we talk about increase, but at that time when I was meeting, I said, you know, keep it the same, do not decrease it. So I think it's just so crucial that we keep supporting education around the world. Because if we are afraid about, you know, crime rate and like illegal immigrants, all these things, I think it's just crucial for us to realize that we have to equip our future generation with the right skills. It's not an issue just for the immigrants, it's an issue for everyone. Even in the US, like, we need to equip the future generation with quality education. Even here and in the UK and in many other countries, like many girls are sent back to their countries and they're forced to get married, or they become victims of FGM, or even just here the citizens of the United States, like, it does, because you belong to a certain community or certain location in this country, you may not be able to receive the complete and quality education. So this is a global issue. So we all need to take it seriously and increase our investment towards education, because, you know, by educating our future generation, we produce, you know, amazing intellectual, great thinkers who change our world. You know, the world we are living in is because of those educated minds that we had in our past and still have, and the educated minds that we produce here at this university.
So as you may recall, when you're younger and you hear people who inspire you, you think, that's so inspiring, but I'm not her. I'll never be Malala. So other than things you can't say, buying your books, especially the book that's coming out in January, for those of means, donating to the Malala Fund, which is doing such important work around the world. What's your message for the young people here who feel these problems are so important, but so much bigger than them and their capabilities? What would you tell them?
You said I can't mention my book.
No, I already mentioned it for you, so you don't have to promote
I can mention my dad's book. So I know we have, yeah, so my dad has also written a book which is called Let Her Fly. So you can get that book. I think just to all the young people who are here, you are all so passionate about change, and I can already see this in this room. So believe in your voice, believe in the potential that you have. If you do not believe in yourself, nobody else would. So it begins with you, it begins with your own self-belief, and I believed in my voice. I believe that that, you know, when you are only 11, you just imagine that, but I said, you know, I am strong, I'm powerful, and I can talk to these people, and I'm not afraid of them. So I think it's just so important that we believe in ourselves and go out and do something, and also help each other and work together on this, and recognize how important it is that we talk about climate change, we talk about the education of the future generation, we talk about health, and we all want to live in a better world. We all want to live in a more prosperous, healthier, wealthier, and safer world. So for that, we need to recognize how important it is that we work in collaboration, and recognize that if we help each other, if we support each other and reach that world that is ideal for all of us, it will benefit all of us. It's not that one group would benefit and another would not. It is a fairer world that would benefit all of us. So, so let's do something for that. And whichever act we take has an impact, whether it's something that you would consider small, but it does contribute to the change that we want to see.
So even if you can't change the world overnight,
yes,
you can change someone's world.
Yes.
Malala, thank you for an inspiring
Thank you so much. Thank you.
evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Should I take this?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.